Hey everybody, welcome back to Record-ology. Today it's all about record changers. So, if you want to learn how to operate them, what the differences are from one type to another, you are in the right place. If you are a beginner, if you are just getting into vinyl, this video should be pretty informative and I hope it's entertaining as well. As a prerequisite, we are going to assume at this point you already have a basic understanding of how a record player works. And if you don't know the basics, no worries, go check out our videos. We've done multiple videos on it. Check out our beginners playlist videos and you will be up to speed before you know it. Then come back over here and we'll apply that knowledge to changers because they're very interesting. They can be intimidating if you're not comfortable with them or used to using them on a day-to-day basis, but they're really fun and I think that you'll enjoy this overview. For those of you that are veterans, and I know you're going to be out there, this is maybe an overview of some features you forgot that you had with your changer. Anyway, it ought to be a lot of fun. You're not going to want to miss this.
Welcome to Record-ology.
Before we jump into the fun, I want to let you know that Mrs. Record-ology actually has a song out. You can enjoy it on any streaming platform from YouTube to Spotify to Apple Music, all of that good stuff. And it is a rendition of Pure Imagination. I'm so proud of her. It's a beautiful song. She did a great job. And this is something she is just blessed with. This is a gift from God. I'm so proud of her. I'll put a link in the description below. Check it out. Stream this song. Tell your friends. All that good stuff. Thank you guys so much. So record changers have become my favorite type of record player. And again, this is designed for people that are familiar with record players, especially modern ones, maybe suitcase players, all-in-ones, or even component turntables, but really have never had a chance to experience a changer. And that's for good reason, because they don't make changers of any type anymore. The last one made was a Crosley Stack-O-Matic about 10, 15 years ago, maybe even a little longer than that. And so every changer on the market now is a used piece of machinery. Now, they very much predate these units right here, which are from 1949, 1950. This is an RCA J2 and an RCA 45J. Changers go all the way back to the beginning. Well, not all the way back, but they go ways back. I mean, there was 78 RPM shellac record changers, some with very amazing mechanisms where they flip the records and send them down a chute. I mean, really, really cool stuff. But these are some of the more interesting changers, and you'll notice that obviously they are designed to play 7-inch records, 45 RPM records. And I thought this would be a good place to start. We're going to look at 3 different changers today. Actually 4, because there's 2 of these here. As you might have guessed, it plays through a whole stack of records. Why would you want that? So you'd have more play time, so you wouldn't have to get up and flip the records over as much. You could just stack a bunch of music on, make a playlist, right? These were the first playlists that existed anywhere. So the 45J and the J2, you'll notice, can't accept a record with a small hole. And you may be saying, what's the deal with that? Well, RCA Victor actually developed the 45 or the 7-inch record with a large hole, I should say, as an RCA proprietary format originally, where Columbia was developing the 12-inch LP with the small hole. So it was a competing format. RCA didn't want you going and buying your album of music on a single disc from Columbia. They wanted you buying it as a box set from RCA Victor. We've shown a bunch of those on the show before. And in order to play that type of record, all you needed was an RCA record changer like one of these. And I'm not going to go into the specifics or the history of these, much deeper than that, other than to say these were designed for the RCA format, not the Columbia format. Over time, the market accepted both formats, and modern changers will play, as you will see, all sizes. But the essence is you have a stack of records. The 45, as we've talked about before, has a raised center hub, so the edges of the records do not touch until they warp. So people that are afraid of having records stacked together need not be afraid, because 45s that aren't warped will be separated by the thicker hub area, and the playing surfaces don't touch. They even use that on LPs in future years, including a little raised area around the outside called groove guard to reduce any damage from playing your record on a changer. Now this particular one right here, there's like not a lot of controls. You've got this on and off switch and you've got this reject button. You'll hear the term reject a couple of times in today's video. Basically it means to stop playing one record and start playing the next. I know the term reject sounds kind of negative and odd in the context of records, but that's what it means. So if we turn this guy on, it'll start spinning, it'll drop the first record, and it will start playing the first record. And then when it gets to the next, or it gets to the end of that record, it will do the same thing. You can force that by hitting the reject button, and it scoots the cartridge and the tone arm out of the way, drops the record, and puts the tone arm and the stylus back down. This particular one is the fastest 45 changer ever made. The actuation, I think, is 2 seconds or thereabouts. Pretty quick to get from one song to the next. Another thing I always like to point out is that all automatic turntables and changers function as manual as well. So people that want manual control can still do that. This one, interesting, you control the tone arm simply by pressing your thumb or finger on the front, giving it a little bit of tension so you can articulate it. Let's see what this does at the very end. What does it do after it's gotten to the run out groove on the last record? The spindle is carrying no more records and the system knows that there are no more records. Let's see what happens when this hits the run out. Goes to the end, triggers a mechanism, and there it goes right back to the beginning and keeps playing it. This particular one will keep doing that until you switch it off. Simple as that. All right, let's look at a little bit more complex and modern changer. So like I said, if you want to get a changer, you have to go vintage. There are no new changers. I hope that changes, no pun intended, but at the moment, you have to go vintage because there just aren't any. You are likely to come across one that looks just like this. This is probably the most popular and common record changer design. Most of these are going to be branded as BSR. This is a Glenburn, which is similar. Done shows about it. It's sort of an offshoot company from BSR. BSRs are viewed by the vinyl community as being cheap but functional, clunky, inaccurate, but they get the job done. They won't do any damage. But an audiophile isn't going to be looking at a changer of any kind as their first choice. They want the full manual experience. The rest of us love the features that you can get from this, but as you can see, there's a mess of controls and things and switches and what does it all do? How do you control it? It can be intimidating, and I speak from experience because I was highly intimidated by these until I learned how they work. And even to this day, sometimes I'll be playing with it and I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do that? People that grew up in the 60s and 70s are very, very familiar with this type of device because they were in every family's console stereo system, one form or fashion. Some of them were standalone. Most of them were in consoles. This mechanism can be found in portables and by different brands. So the controls that I'm going to show you, should be pretty applicable across brands and years, makes and models, all that good stuff. And stay tuned for a premium changer we're going to look at the end of the show. So this has a heavy plinth, and they often ride on these springs so that they have some suspension, which is good to isolate vibrations from the stylus so you don't get unwanted noise and feedback and things like that. So the first thing we need to do is talk about the spindle. You'll notice that this spindle is tall. I was trying to push down and remove it. This one you just have to lift up. And you'll notice that it comes off. The reason why it's tall is so you can stack records. And the reason why it's removable is so that you can put on different spindle types. You will be able to put on just a single small one for playing just one record at a time. Or if you want to change a stack of records with a small hole, you put on this one. Or you can put on a larger adapter to change 45s. This particular unit doesn't have the 45 adapter, so I'm just going to be showing you how to use it with records that have a small hole. So what are we going to do here? First, I'm going to put the tone arm back where it's supposed to be. So to start the process, we're going to put records on. And that makes sense, right? Now, a lot of record sets that were designed to be played on changers will be labeled in sort of a unique way. As you can see, this record says side 1 on this side, but if I flip it over, it says side 4. So how can that be? Well, this is actually part of a 2-record set that was designed to be played on a changer. So what we would do is put the face, this is actually called a face, not a side. We put face number 1 or side number 1 right there. Don't worry about it tipping right now. That looks precarious, but it's okay. And then the next one we would put would be side 2 or face 2, and we would stack it just like so. So what's going to happen, it's not supposed to drop yet. That's okay. I'll put it back up here. No big deal if it does. But what's going to happen is the system will drop the first record. And remember, that was side 1. It'll play through 1. And then number 2 will drop, and et cetera, et cetera. So what happens for 3 and 4? Well, when you're done with the first 2 records, you just flip the same records over and put them back on and go through the process again. 3 will play next, followed by 4. So that's how the records are designed to be played when they are designed to be played on a changer. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't play these records on a regular manual turntable. It's just, that's the idea, if that makes any sense. The next thing I want to talk about is this thing right here. It sort of looks like an extra tone arm. What is this thing? It is called an overarm, and it has 2 functions. The first thing we're going to do with it is use it for one of those functions, which is to stabilize the stack of records, which are precariously sitting on the top of that spindle. There's a little V-shaped notch where those are resting at the moment. Again, perfectly safe. The records were designed to be used this way. Don't let this freak you out. They're not grinding against each other. In fact, while the lower record is playing, the top records will just be completely inanimate. They won't be spinning. They won't be grinding. You don't need to worry about any of that. So the overarm, like I said, has 2 functions. One is to stabilize the stack, and the other is to tell the record player, I'm going to take this off again just for a second, how many records are on the stack. So at the top, it knows it has the maximum amount, which is usually 5 or 6 records. You wouldn't want to put more than that on there. You can put as few as 1 or 2 and all the way up to 5 or 6. If you start doing more than that, sometimes it'll accidentally drop 2 records at once and kind of ruin your day like that. So the fewer, the better. So it tells the record player how many are left because it's sensing how high or low it's positioned. So it's up here, it knows that there's a lot more records than if it's down here. And when it gets to the bottom, it senses that there are none left. You may be saying to yourself, this is amazing that this is being done with no electronics, no computer technology. This is an electromechanical device with an emphasis on mechanical. There is very, very little electronics happening in this situation. It's mostly mechanics, levers, switches, pulleys, things of that nature. Fascinating stuff. So again, let's put our records on top like this. Again, being careful not to handle the surface of the record. And we're going to gently lower our overarm there. And it's going to know that there are, in fact, 2 records on the stack. Next thing we need to do is tell it what speed we need to make this happen. This particular switch down here is a 4-speed select switch. As you can see, we have it set to 33, but you could go 78, 45, 33, or even 16 RPM. So this could play Seebergs, it could play talking book records, things like that. This may be one of my only 2 4-speed record players. One of the cool things about these is they could often play those multiple speeds. It is idler drive. I'm not going to go in too deep on the specifics of the behind the scenes on these because I want to keep it entry level. But instead of a belt or direct drive, there's actually a little rubber wheel inside spinning this platter, which is cool. The downside is they tend to be a little bit fast. So the speed accuracy on some of these changers is a little bit off. And because it's an AC motor, it's not adjustable. And there's no pitch control. There's none of that. So this, again, is very much a consumer device, an entry-level device. The speed accuracy is something that is kind of a trade-off for all this automatic functionality that we're going to enjoy. All right, we've set the speed. This is the control switch. We're not going to mess with that yet. The next thing is we're going to set the record size. This one handles 12-inch records, which is what we have, and that's what it's set to. Also does 10-inch and 7-inch records. You'll see a queuing lever right here and then a little tone arm lift because, like I said, you can use all of these record players in full manual mode if you don't want to use the automatic features. But today we're focusing on the automatic. A lot of them use these switches to select the speed, the size, and all that good stuff. Some of them have automatic sensors on the platter itself that either sense light or lack thereof as the size of the record determines which holes are blocked. Some of them use little fingers or feelers to feel how big the record is. This one, pretty basic, just uses a switch. One thing on these switches, especially if you're dealing with higher end units like duals, don't force these switches. If there's resistance and it doesn't just move at a very light touch, don't mess with it. Don't push it too hard. Don't force it. That would be a big, big, big no-no. Okay, so we've told it how many records by the positioning of this overarm. We've told it how fast, 33 RPM by that switch. We've told it the size with this switch. Now that we've got all of the settings chosen, this is where it becomes very easy. You just literally flip a switch and walk away. And then depending on how many records are on here, you can have hours of music without having to fiddle with this thing anymore. So if we go from stop to start, what happens? Let's observe what happens here. So the platter spins up, but does the arm go anywhere? No, it doesn't go anywhere. It just stays put. And that's kind of maybe confusing. And you may be saying to yourself, why is it doing that? Well, it has to do with the position of the overarm and the fact we've got records stacked. So in order to play the record from this point, we need to go over to auto mode. Now it says, okay, we're ready for business. We're going to drop a record. You can see it sort of vibrating there due to the weight of the record dropping. That's why you got that suspension in there. And the tone arm moves into position and starts playing the record as you would expect. So what happens when it gets to the end of that particular record? Well, it moves into the run out area, which activates a switch, and the tone arm lifts itself, moves itself out of the way, and we drop down another record, and the stylus and the tone arm go into position for playing the top record, and you're good to go. Also, a lot of these automatic turntables, the height of the tone arm will adjust similar to that of the overarm in order to accommodate the thicker record stack that's building up. I'm going to go ahead and put this at the run out groove so we can see exactly what happens. So it's done playing the last record. You've fallen asleep on the couch listening to your Mantovani collection. What happens to your record player? It puts the tone arm back where it's supposed to be. And guess what? It shuts off your record player, which in the case of this very mechanical unit means shutting off the motor. There's no brake on this particular platter, so it just slowly slows down. But you'll wake up 8 hours later and you'll be glad that your record wasn't being ground away by a stylus overnight, spinning and spinning. And all is well in the record world. And that is the essence of using a record changer. And like I said, if I want to use it fully manual, I can. I can still queue up a record. I can still play it anytime I want. I put this into start mode, and then I can just drop this needle here, there, otherwise anywhere I want. Now, what happens if the overarm is over here and it hits that run out groove? How does it act differently? Well, let's find out. As the song completes and the tone arm goes into the run out, it returns home, but is it going to go to sleep? No, it's going to start playing that record again. That's right. Another feature of the handy overarm is the fact that it is a repeat switch. So in addition to stabilizing the records and sensing the amount of records stacked, it is also a repeat functionality switch. So it can sit there and play this record over and over if you leave it like that. However, if it's over here, when it gets done, it will simply bring the tone arm home like we saw before and turn itself off. Now you may be saying to yourself, scratching your head saying, man, this is complicated, but it's really not. It seems like a lot when you're just getting used to record players in general, but pretty soon this will become second nature and you'll really realize that this is a fun and really interesting way to enjoy records. Very physical. Even though it's automatic and allows music to play for hours without you having to get up and flip a record side over every 20 minutes, it still is very tactile, and I love that. So what if we take the automatic record player experience up yet further another notch? I should mention, by the way, that very common type we were just looking at was seen in the 70s and well into the 80s. And again, almost everybody had those. They were very, very common in one form or another. As we progressed further into the 1980s, further developments were made. This is a deck from about 1980, 1981. It's a Technics SLB5. And it is a full changer. And you may be saying to yourself, wait a minute, something looks different. How can this be a changer? Something's missing. What is missing? You may be saying, is it the spindle? Because it only has a small spindle. Remember what I said? That you could get the single spindle? Well, this one has one. This is a single spindle for playing records either manually or automatically, one at a time. But what if I want to play a stack of records? This is a changer after all. Well, just like the other one was removable, you can put on the stacker spindle. That's what they're actually called. And this one works a little bit differently. Instead of having a little V-shaped cutout, this one has sort of a tripod. In fact, these are called tripod stacker spindles. And the records sit on there very similar to what we just did. But again, I want to play 45s too, not just 33 RPM records or records with small holes, because they could be 7-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, whatever, right? Some changers use a 45 adapter that slides over the tall and narrow stacker spindle, but this one actually has its own dedicated one, the bottom of which is the same type of connection as we had on the tall stacker spindle, but it is obviously wide and designed for 45 RPM records here in the States, or any record with a large hole, because again, we custom mix and match all of the settings, the size, the speed, how many records there are, etc., etc. You may also be saying to yourself, wait a minute, where's the overarm? You just got done telling me how important an overarm is, and this one doesn't have one. That's one of the developments that this particular record player turntable changer has, and that is done with this little switch down here. It's a little slider switch called Memogram, and you slide it to select how many records are stacked up, 1 through 6, and then R for that repeat functionality we were just talking about. All of that functionality is done right in here. So what we're going to do is demonstrate how this works with some 45 RPM records. My 3 45 RPM records right on top, just like that. I am going to say we are at 45 RPM. There's a switch right here, just off camera. It does have pitch adjust, so it has the strobe and the pitch control. So unlike that idler drive unit we were looking at earlier, this allows you to dial in the speed perfectly. And it is a belt drive turntable, so it is super quiet in terms of motor noise not translating through to the tone arm, all of that good stuff. This is a major step up. But I'm not going to go too far into that stuff. I want to kind of just talk again about the automatic changer control. Next thing is how many records? And 3 records it is. And I'm going to set the size to 7-inch. And then all I have to do is hit start. And it takes it over from there. It's going to drop the first record. It is going to move the tone arm a little bit slower than that old 45J. It's going to move the tone arm over to the right spot and drop it down. It knows that it's a 7-inch record, so it knows where to place it. If we had selected 12 or 10-inch, it would put it in a different place. So again, what happens once it gets to the end of the record? It hits that run out groove, it moves itself out of the way, drops another record, and comes in to play the next record, just like that. And the idea is, once you've hit start, it'll play through that whole stack of records, and even a stack of 45s can last you quite a long time when you've got 6 of them on there like that. So we play through the next record, and now it's going to drop the last record. It does know that it is the last record. You'll see this little switch here sliding all the way to 0 now, and it knows that this is indeed the last record. So when it gets to the end of the last record, it's going to lift up the tone arm and send it home, but this time it is going to turn itself off because it knows our listening time is over for the moment, and it shuts itself off. Again, saving your record, saving your needle so you can fall asleep listening to your music. I love these things. They are absolutely awesome. And if I wanted to do the same thing with 12-inch records, let me show you how quick it is to switch over to 12-inch records. All I have to do is to take that stacker spindle off, put this correct one on, put it into place. So then we put our 12-inch records on with a small hole. We flip it to 33 RPM. We tell it how many records. There's 2. And we flip this to 12-inch and hit start. As quick as that, less than 30 seconds, you're playing a completely different type of record with that same automatic changer functionality. This is just so cool. I love this stuff. I mean, this is fantastic. All right, my friends, that is going to do it for today. A thumbs up if you wouldn't mind. Comment down below for sure. I would love to get your input. Tell me about interesting changers. Do you have changers? Do you like changers? Do you recommend them? Like we said, sometimes audiophiles don't really like the changer. I think that's misplaced because they serve a very important function, literally. And I think that they're awesome. They're fun. They're very tactile. And it's another fun way to get involved with listening to music on vinyl. Anyway, my friends, that is going to do it for today. Happy record hunting. We'll see you next time.